less than 70 overall. June is okay. June is, we just started this week. Yeah. If you think that you came but you didn't tick at the future, please let me know. Yeah. Maybe somehow you did tell me, but I missed that. Can you just check yours? So I think Wan Muhammad Iman, March tak datang langsung. No Nazwin, in May, did you come to the class? What about Ilham? Muhammad Ilham? Muhammad Hazim? It divided by 4, 75%. So if you like Amirul here, 100% for the 3 months, then it's fine. Should be here 100% lah. The one that have less than 70% for each month. At Hazim income, yeah, for March. Did you came or not to the class? And Hazim, did you actually register late? Can you guys here see this report or boleh nampak tak report ni? Like Balkis here, Nazim Balkis, your attendance the new is less than 50%, 25% je. Okay, please take note, yeah, if you came to the class, yeah, you forgot to tick on the future, please let me know. This is for only the online class that we have conducted. So I will cross check with the one that you attended physically for the lab. Okay, this is for class A. Okay, let's look class B. Class B, March up until June. Maybe something like Ashraf. Okay. And Hani Shafika. And then Aris Lokman. Aizat. Aizat Asfar. Okay. I think that's the names that I would like you guys to recheck back for your attendance for the online class because it shows that it less than 50%. So please check again. If you did came, just let me know. I will verify it again. And I will also check this one with the physical class that you have attended. All right? Boleh class? Okay. All right. You guys ready? Can we go straight to the lecture for today?
Yes.
All right. For today, we're going to continue with the enterprise Java beans. Before the break, I already touched half of topic, yeah, which is chapter 6 regarding using Java beans in JSP. Okay, so today we're going to look at the enterprise Java beans, which is another kind of Java beans. So we will touch on what is EJB and what are the functions of the EJB, what are the types of EJB, and also when to use this EJB. So Java beans in using JSP are totally different with the enterprise Java beans. Yeah? So they are actually different components. So what are EJBs? So EJBs is a special kind of Java bean for performing server-side business logic. So meaning that when you have a requirement, you want to develop an enterprise application, and then you need to separate the logic, yeah, with the front end, which is the view, and also you need to have the controller. So somehow you also need more services, yeah, on the web server side. So you need to use these enterprise Java beans. So this enterprise Java bean is server side component, yeah, that helps to summarize the business logic of a certain application. So as you can see, the EJB is on the third layer here. They are using a specific container, which they call it as EJB container. So this is the enterprise Java beans. Okay, this one, yeah, enterprise bean, which is EJB container. Okay, there are a few types of EJB. You have session bean, entity bean, and also message-driven bean. For session bean, we also have two types, which is stateless and also stateful. For entity bean, we do have two types, which is BMP and CMP. Last one is the message-driven bean, whereby this is to support the asynchronous communication. Okay, so let's look one in detail. Yeah? Let's look for before that, let's look at the definition of session bean. So normally session bean associate the client information with a specific client. There are two types, stateless and stateful. So we will look into detail how the stateful and stateless look like. And then we will look at an example of the entity, yeah, entity bean, which is group associated information in an abstraction that provide the transaction support. So entity bean is more useful for database connection. Right? If you have transaction or requirement for database, so you need to have this entity Java bean. Message bean is rarely used, and also nowadays it's hardly supported because of the less of services. So normally we'll use session bean or entity bean. So let's look at the session bean. Session bean represent a single client inside the server itself, the glass server, the one that we use in our lab exercise. And then it is actually one client at a time. Okay. And then when the client terminates, the session bean is disassociated from the client. So you have two types of session bean, which is stateless and stateful. So stateless, let's look at stateless. Stateless session bean, any client can use them, whereas stateful is a specific to a particular client, meaning that it's like a session. When you log in, you use that session, and the session will be alive up until you log out. And also it will maintain the information about the client. So that is stateful session bean. So stateful, for example, for stateful session bean, we can take like, okay, you guys love to shop, right? You guys use Shopee ke or Lazada ke, kan? Now, whenever that you add to the cart, okay, it will still there, right? Whenever that you open the apps, when you open the Shopee, right? Shopee apps, the things that you have added to the shopping cart is still there, right? Although you have not even log out, you shut down phone ke, okay? So that's to show that that is actually a stateful session bean. Yeah. So it will save the information of the client. So they represent interaction between the client and server. So it saves information over several method invocation. Method invocation ini maksudnya when you add, you edit, you want to change size or you want to change color. Yeah? So that is method invocation. Okay, then there is a lot of overhead associated with the using the stateful session bean. For that is stateful. Okay, for stateless is does not save information between method calls, meaning that dia tak sama dengan whatever yang you done with the shopping cart. So, for example, it can be like an automated email sent after you register to an application or register to a system. Okay, so stateless meaning that it does not save information between method calls, then limited application, little overhead, meaning that you can use the same bin instance without alteration. So dia akan reuse the same stateless bin. Dia tak specific for a specific client. Okay? This is another example. Fetch from a read-only database or send a confirmation email for an order. Sama juga lah. So if you buy something after you have paid, right, for that particular order, so automatically stateless session bin will be sent to the to show that this is a confirmation email for an order. So dia akan click this stateless session bin. Boleh tak stateless and stateful? So far so good?
Boleh.
You dengar suara saya clear ke?
Clear.
Let's move on to the entity bins. So for entity bins, this is more likely a Java bin, enterprise Java bin that always associate with database. So meaning that whenever that you have this bin, you need to have the table that rely on this particular entity bin. So this can be accessed by multiple clients at a time, it is persistent, then the container loads and store the entity bin in the database. Okay, so it's rely on the table itself. So let's say you are the book home table, and then you are the book bin, and then you are the book. So this to show that these tables are having relationship. Yeah. So this shows they have one to many. This one is one to one. And then you will need a book bin as enterprise Java bins. Yeah? So for enterprise Java bin, for entity bin, you have two types. You have CMP, Container Management System, and then you have BMP, Bin Management System. So these bins are defined dependent of the database that you use. And these bins use explicit SQL statement relating to the database that they use. So CMP, normally you use it whenever that you want to define an independent. So dia tak rely on database relationship. Whereas BMP is always relate, yeah? And then you will use explicit SQL statement. So more about entity bins. So normally entity bins, yeah, this is you're using when you have like, for example here, airline booking. So if the flight booking action fails, and then the credit card charge action fails, or vice versa. So dia tak rely on the container to enforce the robust transaction. So it does have related to the database, like I said just now, you're the book bin, and then book bin table, and then you also ada book bin EJB. Same goes here. So meaning that you ada satu credit card bin in your database, and then you also have credit card enterprise Java bins. So they will be connected, yeah. And then this is what entity bin does. So it rely on the transaction between the transaction that you made for the application with the database itself. So persistent in entity bins, which is CNP, so the container will control when the bin is read from a return to the database. Whereas for BNP, the bin's implementation performs all of the SQL operations that loads and store updates the bin's data to or from the database. So bin is responsible for connection allocation to the database. So this is the difference between CMP and also BNP. All right, we have session bin vs entity bins. Yeah. So just now I have actually explained about both. Okay, as you can see, session bin will represent a business process. For example, billing, credit card, trading stocks. whereas NTB Bean will represent the persistent data. So it rely on the database itself. And it can be shared by multiple clients. And then for session bean, sometimes if you use stateless, it does not associate with one client, whereas if you use stateful, it will associate it with one client. Okay, and then the life of the session bean is the life of the customer. And then it did not survive from the server crash. Whereas entity bean, because they relate with the database, so it will survive if the server crash. So meaning that tadi kalau contoh saya airline booking kan. So airline booking tu kalau fails, dia tak akan charge lah. So they will use the entity bean rather than session bean. So each of these beans have their specialty. So we need to look at what are the requirements for that particular bean before you use the enterprise Java beans. If it rely on the database, then you need to choose entity bean. If it rely on the customer itself, we need to use the session bean. All right, let's look at the last one, which is the message bean. So message bean here is an enterprise bean that allow the server, the Glassfish server, to process message synchronously, and it acts as a JMS message listener. So many systems do not support JMS or anymore. So we very rarely use this. This is for messaging, message bean. Okay. All right, let's look at the functions of the EJB. So as far as I have explained just now, so they have their specific functions, but then they also have, they also being supported by all these extra services that provided by the Glassfish server itself, the application server or the Java EE transaction, object handling, persistent mechanism, and also lifecycle management. So this is all the functions of the EJB that Java beans do not have. Okay, so I repeat again, Java beans do not have. Why? Because Java bean is a normal Java bean, it's a normal Java class, whereas EJB, when you should use this one, whenever you are required to develop an application that needs scalability. So contohnya kalau you nak develop an application that being used by 1,000 user that can hit one button at one time. And you need to perform about 0.005 seconds. So this is where you need to use this EJB, Enterprise Java Beans, to support all of this, in terms of security, in terms of transaction, meaning that you need to have very fast transaction load, and the load balancing for that particular server, exception handling, and also persistent mechanism. So these are all functions that are useful application. So you need to use all these services if you perform EJB in developing an enterprise application that needs scalable, robust, support a lot of user at one time that hit one button. The performance needs to be 0.005 seconds, something like that. All right, when to use this EJB? So when your application needs remote access, and then when application is business logic, when you say business logic, meaning that it's very, very simple business logic like plus, minus, multiply. So when you have this kind of business logic, it can be reused for other functions. So that's why when this requirement is stated for that application, so you can use EJB. And then when your application need to be scalable, as I said just now, scalable means that you want to have 1 million or 1,000 users hit one button at the same time, and the performance must be 0.005 seconds. All right, let's look at an example of EJB. So for EJB, you have an online banking application. So we want to demonstrate how all the component technologies like Enterprise Bean, Java EE application, and also web components fits together. So let's say you have two clients. So G2EE application client used by the administrator to manage the customer's account. And then you also have the web client used by the customer to access account history, perform transaction. So then the client also can access all this customer account, transaction information, maintain in the database through Enterprise Bean. So if you have this kind of requirement, let's say for this online banking application, then you need to develop an application using the Enterprise Java Beans. So this is how it looks. Yeah? So first you need to draft the component. So for EJB, you can draft that. You need to have session bin for manage the transaction. You need to have entity bin here to manage the account controller session bin. And you need to have customer with entity bin. And then you also need to have controller session bin. So as you can see, these three kind of components. You have controller for the transaction, you have for the account, you have for the customer. And so this is as a controller, and it actually using session bin. Whereas you also have specific bin, which is an entity bin to manage first the transaction, second the account, third is the customer. So all this will very specific and rely on the database itself. So in the database, it will have entity bin table, specific for transaction, for account, and also for customer. So this is to show you how the enterprise Java beans look like. So you need to have this kind of components. And then next, the web container, which is the front end, you will need the GSP. So you can have account list.jsp, account history.jsp, transfer funds.jsp, and also ATM. So this is only the functions, right? You need to have very specific function for each of it. Let's say for customer, for a client, or for a particular user. Okay. So this is on the web container. You can use GSP or servlet itself. All right. Any question, class? Boleh. On this example.
Boleh.
So let's look more. I explain more about the example. So for this one, okay, we have controller for account, for customer, and also for transaction. So this session bin provide a client's view of the application business logic. And also it's hidden from the client and on the server side. That implement the business logic, access database, manage relationship, and perform the error checking. So as you can see from this figure, kan, controller ni dekat EJB, kan, EJB container. So it actually is not on the front end, in the back end part. Okay, so that's why it say it hidden from the client, web client. It's only appear on the application level, on the server side. Entity bin. So as we can see, we also have entity. Just now, kita ada account EJB bin, customer EJB bin, and also transaction EJB bin. So as I say, it will relate with account, customer, and transaction. So they will be corresponding between the bin itself and also the table. So this is how it looks at the table part. Customer, account, also transaction. Also it have one table that manage for customer account reference. Okay, that is about EJB. Yeah, we have learned before the break about Java beans. If you still remember, what is Java beans? So Java beans is like a normal Java class that you use in GSP. So you will create a Java bean, like you create coffee bean too, kan? So you create Java bean and then you will create the front end with the GSP. All right, so this is the difference between Java beans and EJB. For Java beans, for general purpose, whereas for EJB, specific for enterprise. So if you work later, the industry, if you have the requirement to develop an enterprise application, you might want to look at this EJB components, because it does have support from all the services that I've shown you just now for the load balancing, for the transaction management. So all that services are having all the libraries already. So you just need to create object and reuse it. So much more faster for you to code if you use enterprise Java beans that have all the available Java class that being created, meaning that you have the library lah. You just plug in the library and then just create object, just reuse it to support your enterprise part. Okay, so Java Beans normally runs locally, whereas EJB are distributed component and always exist on the server side. And then it can be used as active as control if Java Bean, whereas EJB cannot. And then for Java Bean, no types, whereas for EJB, we have two types. The most widely used, session and the bean. Message-driven it is rarely, not being used commonly. Java beans can be inherited. I still remember if you create Java bean, you buat implements, right? Implements, so that is multiple inheritance. You implement the interface. And then EJB, you do not have inheritance facility. So tomorrow in our lab exercise, we will practice on the EJB stateless session bin. Yeah. So you're going to develop a session bin that contain the business logic, and then also this is the business logic, and then this is your application class library project to access the report interface and entity class, and then this is the web client to test the EJB module. Yeah, so we're going to do these three projects tomorrow, right? Sorry, class. Okay, let's do the tutorial. All right, for tutorial week 10, we have a few questions here. Can you guys hear me? Okay, question number 1. To run an EJB application, what do you need? Basically, the common thing. Come on, class. Look at my slide. Okay, EJB container, right? Oh, sorry, enterprise bin. Okay, what do we need here? To run an EJB, what do you need? Can you guys hear me? Aziz ada? Aiman? Haris? Boleh dengar saya tak?
Boleh dengar.
Okay, to run an EJB application, what do you need, guys? For my slide just now, here, can you guys, can you do some assumption ke? Can you guess what do you need to run an EJB? Gunakan apa? Kelas? Dalam NetBeans ada apa? Glassfish server. Yeah, Glassfish server is actually our Java EE server. Boleh? So to run any EJB application or any web application, you need to have a web server, which is an application server that act as your container as well. All right, so let's look at question number 2. How many types of EJB? We have looked into it just now. How many type class?
3.
3 types. Okay, number 1.
Entity beans.
Right, that's right. Entity bean, session bean, and then what else? Most rarely, not the most, the rarely being used.
Message driven beans.
Okay, message driver bean. All right, for session bean, right? You have 2 types. Okay, that's this question number 4. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's look at number 3. Why we need to use EJB for remote access? Remote access, I have explained here. When your application need remote access, why remote access? Because it should be what? Anyone have a guess? Should be here. Why remote? Not sure. Come on. Why we need to use EJB for remote access? Anyone? Have a guess?
Enterprise management.
To support all the local, right? Not local, to support all the enterprise functions needed. For example, okay. Okay, acceptable, the answer, because you not support all this. That's why you need to have the remote access. So each of these services will support the EJB because it being placed, yeah, being located as a remote access. So let's say security services from the Java library want to access this EJB. So it is located on the remote access. So it's much more easier for these libraries to access it. So that's why this EJB need to be remote access. Yeah. Next class. All right, how about number 4? What about the difference between stateless and stateful? I give an example just now, kan? Stateless. Ini satu yang shopping cart tadi. Stateless ke stateful? Come on. Stateful kan? Ke stateless?
Stateful.
Stateful shopping cart kan? Okay, for example, just now, stateful, kita kata shopping cart. Whenever that you add, and then they will be alive up until you remove it. So that is example of using the stateful session bean. Whereas stateless, the Java bean can be reused over and over again, and then they tak maintain the client information. So it can be shared with all of the client information, meaning that dia ialah reusable Java bean. Stateless tu dia can be reused sebab dia tak simpan, save all the information. Whereas for stateful, it will save the information for a particular session. So after you log in, log out, and then it's still there, because you save. Okay, explain the steps to create a stateless EJB module. Tell me, we will do it tomorrow. As you can see here. So this is step. First, you need to have the business logic. So we will create one EJB, which is to support the basic operation EJB module. We call it as operation session bean. And then we will do number 2, we will create an application class. Okay, that is to have the remote interface. So this is the one that will handle the remote access. And then last, we need to have the basic operation web client, this one, to test the EJB module. So you can perform, fill out the form, when you submit, it will appear on the results. And at the back end, basically, it's actually using all these two project, which is the business logic and also the one that have remote access. So we will do it tomorrow on LECT10. All right. Last question. Why Java Beans is less complex than EJB? You have looked into it just now, right? After I explain. So why do you think Java Beans is less complex? Compare to the lab exercise yang you dah buat. Tu you buat coffee bean kan? Then you buat JSP. So why Java Bean is less complex? Come on, class. Anyone?
Because Java Bean is simple and much more simpler than EJB, which is the enterprise level application.
Right, thank you. So because of Java Beans, normally we used to develop using the normal web application, whereas EJB is specific for enterprise application, as I said before. So it will support the the scalable, the one that need many transactions that can be executed at one time, at 1 second. So that kind of complexity. All right. Any question, guys, on this EJB? This is the last topic of EJB. Next, we will go into the developing enterprise application. So you akan buat MVC for the next topic. Any questions so far for EJB? So far so good?
Good, madam.
Okay. So in that case, I think there's no questions. So I leave you guys with the quick chat. Then tomorrow we will do the lab 10 in our lab. Anyone have any issue for your group project? Tak ada? Ada?
Belum lagi.
Belum lagi. Dah start buat belum? Belum
Dah. Belum ada problem lagi.
So you can always refer to the lab 11, 12, 13. Tapi tak apa. If you want to wait for doing it for next week, also can. And so lab 11 will have the MVC, lab 12 also will have MVC, and lab 13 also will have MVC. So actually, if you do 11, 12, 13, and then you modify a little bit, it can be useful for your future as well. Yeah. All right. If you guys do not have anything, can you guys access the forms?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's all for today. Thank you, class.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.